Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Challenge yourself to change lives with the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. They make a no-strings-attached charitable donation when participants complete one or all of the 6 athletic challenges. In doing so, they aim to build a worldwide community that transcends sport and encourages people to make a positive lifestyle change while helping those in need. For 2023, a difficult but doable set of challenges has been created by Jeff Privete himself. They have all been inspired by his personal experiences throughout 2022. The events can be done in any order, and with the exception of the Road Gravel Challenge, there is no time limit for completion of a given event. All you have to do is make it through. Completing all 6 will require an incredible amount of dedication, courage, and a willingness to embrace the journey, regardless of the outcome. Won't you join Jeff at thebigbeltbucklechallenge.org? This is the Big Belt Buckle Challenge. Hello and welcome to the Answer Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Matt, last week I looked at the downloads and it was just out of control. I don't know what happened on August 17th, but we had our largest group of show downloads. So thank you for that. Maybe it was because I was promoting this event that I'm doing with David Meltzer, Robert Greene, and Rachel Sabota, my partner. And if you're not familiar with them, please go on Instagram and follow them. But David Meltzer is he owns Sports One Marketing. He's one of the largest sports agents in the country, if not the world. Used to be the CEO for Lee Steinberg back in the day, if you know the sporting world. And then Robert Greene is a 6-time New York Times bestseller with his 48 Laws of Power and several other great books. And Rachel, of course, is my best friend and business partner and one of the world's best marketers. So this event is Thursday, August 24th at Chapman College in Orange County, California. So please join us. A few tickets left. By the time this show airs, there'll probably be even less. So get after it. All right. Well, today I've got a special guest on, and I'm going to go with Dr. Jean because I didn't ask you the pronunciation of your last name before we hit record.
Yeah, that's okay. Most people can't say it. That's why I'm Dr. Jean, the results queen. It's just easier than to say Ausler. So, and actually my mom is Dr. Ausler. And so therefore there can't be 2 of us. So I'm Dr. Jean and she's Dr. Ausler.
I like it. Keep it simple.
Yep.
Well, look, I read your bio and I like that it says the results queen because that we all want results, don't we?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
But hey, no pressure if somebody hires you because they're looking for the result.
Actually, my clients crowned me the results queen because I am all about getting results from my clients. And if we don't give a result, we give your money back because we feel that powerful about the things we do.
Mm-hmm.
And when my clients kept telling me, like, Jean, you're like the results queen, I called up my IP lawyer and said to him, I think I should become Jean, the results queen, because that's what my clients are saying to me. And it's not more than one. There's like 10 or 12 of them.
Yeah.
And he said to me, no, you can't be the results queen. And I said, why? He said, because Jean, the results queen, sounds so much better than Jean, queen of results. So you can't be, like that's what you're going to be. And that's how I became Jean, the results queen. And then I got a Ph.D. in business psychology. And then I became Dr. Jean, the results queen.
Even better. I love it. Well, look, you're an East Coaster. There's no doubt that you do get results. All of my friends from New York, New Jersey, and the East Coast, they get shit done. So there's no doubt about your abilities.
Yes, that is truth.
You told me you had an interesting entrepreneur story that created your long-term, maybe a vision or life of being an entrepreneur. So if you want to start with that, why don't you tell that story? We'd love to hear it, and maybe we can learn something from it.
Oh, I'm happy to do that. So I was working for a family-owned business. It was a pharmaceutical marketing company. So we were working on advocating for pharmaceutical products. And one day I'm sitting around with my fellow employees and we're just complaining about the fact that we can't find any people to work in the openings we have. And then once we get them, they're never trained. And so we complain for weeks about the same thing. So finally, I was like, I don't want to complain anymore, because if you complain, you get nothing done. It just feels good. But the fact is, at the end of the day, it doesn't get. So then I started coming to the table and saying, well, what should we do about this? What should we do about this? And of course, my colleagues were like, well, we don't know. I'm like, okay. So at the time, I was getting a certificate in career development. I had owned my own resume writing business on the side, in addition to my corporate job. And so I was getting a certificate in career development. And the course that weekend just happened to be about all of these things that you could do around training for career internally. So I was like, well, this is great. I think I could solve this problem. So I went to the CEO's office, and I was a little nervous because I thought to myself, I'm really going to be firing myself out of a job. And I sat in his office and I said, look, I have some ideas. We have these challenges, like we can't find anybody and we can't train them. And I think I have some solutions that could really help that. And he said, okay, tell me what your solutions are. And, like, we'll see what it is. So I wrote him a 50-page presentation deck. Each page was an idea with a return on investment.
Mm.
I made the presentation to him. And he said, great, you've just created your own job. You can work with my sister-in-law who does benefits and compensation, and then you can create whatever job you want to get these things done. I want all 50 of these things completed. And I thought to myself, okay, now what? So I got this job, and he said, I'll give it to you for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, I'll put you back in your old job. I'm like, okay, now what? So I went and got a master's degree in organizational development, and specifically in what was called distance learning at the time. Now we call that webinars. And my thesis was, could you do onboarding in video as opposed in distance learning as opposed to in person? So I did everything that you can imagine except compensation and benefit. And I became the VP of HR, and I had no HR background.
Mm.
So that's my entrepreneurial story. Again, I did that job for many years until I got pregnant, which I always like, how did that happen? And then people say to me, birds and bees, Dr. Jean. And I'm like, yeah, all right. And the sister-in-law said to me, when I had put in all of these programs to help women, because 85% of our population were women. So we had take your kid to work day and all these, like you could breastfeed and all this kind of stuff to support our employees. We actually were thinking about developing and constructing a daycare center on our property. Yeah. So I did all these wonderful things. And finally, after 9 months of bringing my kid to work, my boss was like, she needs to go to daycare and you need to come back full time. So I did for 3 months. And she's like, you're miserable. I think you should lay yourself off. So I'm going to lay you off, and you can collect unemployment and you can be a mom. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And then I said, what's next? Right. Because I was like, okay, now what? Right. Now what? So I came home and I was like, I don't really want to be a stay-at-home mom. So I decided that I would start a training and development company, which I did. And the largest company, my first client was the largest hospital in New Jersey.
Wow.
I've never looked back. And my daughter is 24 years old. So she was a year old when I started my company. So I've been in a mompreneur, which was not even a label, for 23 years.
Wow. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, there's a couple things you said that are great topics, at least to cover. You started the story off by you and some colleagues sitting around talking about what you could be doing, and eventually said, well, let's just do something about it. And I think oftentimes we find ourselves in those circles, but we keep talking about it. We don't do anything. What was it that gave you the courage to actually do something at the moment? Because there's one thing to have, we're talking around the water cooler, but then going to your boss and going, okay, I got some ideas.
Yeah, I really did. I can still remember, like it was yesterday, my heart was beating so quickly when I walked in, because I thought to myself, he's going to say, like, you don't like your job, we should fire you. I mean, I'm really jeopardizing my career here. But at the same time, I really had a solution to things that were challenging in the organization. And what could have he said? Like, seriously, do you think he was going to fire me after coming with this idea? He could have said to me, Jean, no, we're not doing this. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But instead, and this is sort of a know your audience, he was an entrepreneur. And he was willing to fix the challenges in your business. If you have a boss who's not willing to fix the challenges in your company, then there's no reason to have the conversation. But mine was willing to do that.
Sure.
So, and if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here where I am today.
No, right. Well, also, I want to point out, kind of a sidebar here, that you put in the work, for you to show up with 50 ideas, including the ROI on them, how could he not say yes to that? I mean, if an employee did that for me, I'd be like, wow, they clearly did their work here.
Well, I think that I'm always been competitive. I've always been someone who wants to do the best. And the fact is that if I was going to do this, I had to give him a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he didn't like all of it, he liked some of it. And I was in client services. Remember, I was working with pharmaceutical companies, so I was quite used to talking to them and helping them with ideas. So it's the same skill set. It was just using it in a different place.
Sure. Why 50? Did you sit down and go, I'm going to come up with 50 ideas, or did it just happen that way? He just started going and you're at 50.
It just started that way, and then it just happened. And it was funny because you think to yourself, why wasn't it like 49 or 48? It just happened to be 50. I mean, at 50, I was like, I was done. I had everything
Sure.
that I possibly could think about. There was nothing
Sure.
else. And I figured I should just go for everything, not just a little bit. It was like sort of an all or nothing kind of thing. I should go for everything. And I think nowadays, now that we teach caveman brain, and now that I know a lot more about our caveman brain and how it is, I was very brave. I might have been stupid, but I was very brave.
Well, I think you took a risk and you put in the effort behind that risk so that you reduced, what that risk might look like. You were passionate about what you were doing. It's interesting. Maybe you can talk about this a little bit. When you went through that process, I find that sometimes I sit at my computer, I can't do anything, and literally I just got to get up and I'll go out in the yard and do something with the animals. But other times you get in the zone, and if you can identify being in that zone, you really can create a tremendous amount of work. And so I'm just curious: is that what happened to you with these 50 ideas, and were they all at once, or was it over a long period of time?
Oh no, everything happened all at once. Because remember, we had been talking about it with my colleagues for a long period of time. I really could have just gone and interviewed them and said, what's all the challenges that we want to fix? But then they would have asked me, what was I doing? And I didn't want them to know that if I failed, what. So I just took all of the information that I'd gathered over the weeks that we had lunch, everything that we had complained about, and put it down on a piece of paper, and then said, okay, what based on my career development class, what would I do to solve that? So one of the things that I'm really very good at, and that's how I started my consulting business, is kind of to look at the problem and think about all different types of solutions. Most people have never really thought about it. And then to think about, okay, then how do you make money from that?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact is that I was either saving him money or I was making him money in one way or form. And who wouldn't want that as a business owner?
Sure.
And,
Who wouldn't,
right?
right? Who wouldn't? And by the way, I love this topic because what it shows me is that you were an incredible employee at the time. And so I was with my brother over the weekend in Bend, Oregon, and he was the CEO for a company called In-N-Out Burger, which is a West Coast hamburger chain, probably one of the top in the world. And he said, Jim, when I was working, and by the way, he's part of the family that owns the company. But there's no easy road in that company, by the way. He says, Jim, when I was an employee, I did everything I could to be their most important asset. In other words, if they were sitting around going, hey, we got to cut costs, I want to be the last person they cut. And I think that's so important right now too, in the economy and recession and whatever you want to, whatever environment you're living and working in right now, is becoming that most valuable employee. And to me, I'm hearing your story going, wow, this person added a tremendous amount of value to this company. I wouldn't want to cut her ever. Actually, let's create a job for her.
And that's what happened. Well, it's interesting. I mean, when I was raising my kids, I used to say to them, because I really thought about the fact that my mission in life is to raise two happy, healthy, well-adjusted model adult citizens who are financially independent from me. I've said that a lot. But I
Mm-hmm.
used to say to them, if you were my employee, I'd be firing you now. And they would kind of look at me. And I was like, because you need to do things that are going to contribute and add value. You just can't sit there playing on your video games all day, unless that's something that's going to help my company in some way, shape, or form, or help our family in some way, shape, or form, right?
Sure.
It's a different way of thinking about it. But most of us don't really think about, as employees, we tend to come for us. No employee shows up to screw up. However, employees are really focused on themselves. Am I going to do something that's going to get me fired? I loved that company so much because I had made the switch from about me to being about the company. And I thought if I took care of the company would take care of me, which it
Mm-hmm.
did, right? So the fact is that I was happy to help the company. And that made me a company girl. But the fact is that how is the company going to help you if you don't help the company?
And what's wrong with being a company girl, right? Our company guy. People say that as a negative, and it's it's like, why wouldn't you want to be? Why wouldn't you want to do the best job possible? And by the way, just kind of moving through your story a little bit, they took care of you all the way to the end, including laying you off so you can collect unemployment.
Yep.
I've been down that road a couple times, and I've had great employers that have done that for me so that I can go off and create something like Be a Dad too. So, how did that feel when you got to the end of that journey and it was time to go off to the next step?
So interestingly enough, I never collected unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
I left, and I knew that I wanted to start my own business, and I knew that I was really good at training. So I decided to start a training company, and God or universe or energy, however, put me in the right place. And I was able to close the largest hospital in New Jersey as my first client.
Mm.
And I used my master's degree. I mean, I really do believe education can really help get you where you need to go. I mean, I had a master's degree in organizational development, and I knew how to develop curriculum because I'd been doing training, and I created a corporate university. So the hospital needed someone to take care of all their training, and here I was. So that's what we did. And we did that for almost 7 years.
Mm.
And by the time I'd gone through several administrative changes. And once I went to like the 5th administrative, they were like, Jean, you're going to be done now. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So now what, right? Now what should we do? And I thought, well, my daughter's she's in 1st grade. I could either go back into the workforce, or I could really make this a company. And I'd picked up a couple of other companies along the way. So I decided I'd really start being a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never looked back. The entrepreneurial life to me is the best life that anyone can have.
Sure. Well, in my world, they call that God opens doors for us, and it's up to us to walk through them. And clearly you did, and you had some faith in that step. It's interesting. I'm listening to you tell your story, and it's kind of like you went off on your own, you landed a big client, but in one way or another, it almost seems like it wasn't quite your own business yet until you gathered more clients, and it's like, okay, they're gone. I got to get more. But the reality is, from day one, moment one, you were in business for yourself.
Truth. I think that because I worked 3 days a week, and then I took the other 2 days to be mom. So I think I was really working a part-time job. Although what's interesting is that many, many years later, I was working with a Harvard neuroscientist, and he asked me to do this time audit. So I did this time audit to see where best use of my time and the best way of maximizing myself as a business owner. And it turned out I was still working a part-time job. I was just making a lot more money. So that's pretty good, right?
My wife started a marketing business a couple years ago. She had an online retail apparel company, and it was all about women with a voice, which I thought was pretty awesome. And she started getting frustrated because she wasn't seeing a lot of sales. So we talked about pivoting, because she was really good at creating websites and logos and all these other things for other people. Long story short, she starts doing that instead of selling retail apparel, and she landed a massive client. And when she landed it, she started calling it, oh, my boss, my boss, my boss. She never shifted her reality of, hey, this is, by the way, your own business. He's not technically, I mean, look, yeah, he pays your bills, right? He is your boss in a sense, but it's a client. And even up until last week, after having this client for almost a year, she decided, hey, I've got to go back to being a mom more than what I am. And she's like, I had to quit my job. I'm like, quit your job? You just laid off your client, So it's just funny how our mind does these things, right? We want to put ourselves into that neat little box that we've learned, but the reality is we're entrepreneurs.
Correct. We are. We're either entrepreneurs or we're entrepreneurs. I mean, that's really what we are. And unfortunately, we don't train our children in school to think that way, right? But if we did, I think we'd have such a better workforce.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about after the hospital was gone and you had a couple clients. How did things transition for you, and how do you get to where you're at today?
So one of the things is that I'm really good at seeing the next trend. So I've closed and created a lot of different businesses. I became a serial entrepreneur, and now, and how I got to here again, because of my daughter. She was in a competitive equestrian, and she ended up having a pretty severe concussion. And I was flying around to all these Fortune 500 companies, was doing all this great Fortune 500 work, and in process improvement. And then I needed to be home with her. So the business has always been for my kids. And so I gave most of my consultants work, and I took a few clients home and started an online company and helped her get better. She's perfectly fine now. And from the online company, we started Caveman Brain Business Growth System because we realized that people were not happy about sales. Like they don't like sales. They don't want to be pushy, salesy, aggressive. I'd worked with a Harvard neuroscientist myself to figure out why was I not doing better in sales. We don't even call it sales. We call it new business development. And once I learned all about this, and actually this back here, your amygdala, and how it prevents you from being more successful, I was like, I don't want people to not be successful, especially in new business development. So we created a whole system for people to know that they could grow their companies or grow themselves or grow internally and be able to find the right people to talk to and feel good about it, and be able to be more successful because of it. So that's how I got here today. So again, following my kids' lead, here I am.
Yeah. By the way, so I'm consulting for a large ranch here in Montana. And they have a lot of boarders there. Half of them are hunter show, dressage. The other half are barrel racers, pole bending, calf chasing, right? And so when the two mix on the same day because there's events, I heard she rides dressage, and she's walking by. She goes, "Jim, not a single helmet in sight," because it was just a bunch of barrel racers with their cowboy hats. Right.
Yep.
I'm thinking, brain injury. Right. So it's just interesting, the worlds that we live in and the mentality, even though what you most would think, oh, aren't they all horse people? Nope. They're completely different.
All completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a whole other show that we could talk about and saying yes.
For sure. For sure. So tell you what, I don't want you to give away the secret sauce, but how about talk a little bit about different sides of the brain and how it works and how people can find more success. I call it get out of your own way,
Listen, I'm happy to share the secret sauce because to me, I really want people not to suffer the way I did and not understand about our caveman brains. Our brain is the least studied organ in our body. Think about how we scan all of our organs to find out what's wrong with it. We hardly ever scanned our brains to know what's wrong with our brains. And the fact is that we have what I call caveman brain. So it is your amygdala, it's your internal protection system. Think fight, flight, or freeze. Its whole job is to ensure that you don't die. That's it. It's constantly scanning the horizon looking for danger. And all it knows is what it sees and what it hears. So imagine all the things that we tell ourselves every day.
Yeah.
Right. All those negative thoughts. Like, think about my story. I could have just said to myself, oh, Jean, he'll never say yes to you. You're jeopardizing your life and your future. Why would you ever even think about going into his office and telling him that? Right? You might as well just stay home and just continue your job and be fine. Like, that's what our caveman brains tell us. And a lot of times what they tell us, it's just not truth. It was great when we had saber-toothed tigers to run away from, but there's not much that's going to kill us and not much that's really going to jeopardize us. So once you know about and understand your caveman brain, you can actually make it your partner and your friend to help you be more successful because you're telling it what to do as opposed to it telling you what to do.
Right.
And all you need to do is just tell it what you want. And once you do that, and our whole system is teaching you how to do that around new business development. You can do it for leadership. You can do it as a parent. Once you learn the system, you can do it anywhere in your life. And that's what I love about it. And it's everything that I've learned myself and taught myself, and so that other people can know how to be successful in their business.
I've used one line since 1984 to describe that. And I was fortunate enough to hear Mark Victor Hansen speak live. He was a guest speaker for In-N-Out Burger. And my takeaway, by the way, on that bookshelf behind me, there's a cassette tape from this, Mark Victor Hansen cassette tape. My takeaway was, what you believe is what you will achieve. And I've said that ever since. And that really it's a summary of exactly what you said. If you can believe in your vision, your dreams, and what you want to do, you can achieve it. I've tried to keep away from that, that fight or flight mentality and everything's danger my whole entire life. What's interesting to me though, is how do you convince others of that? Because like I said, I've been saying this for a long time, but people, they just they're determined to get in their own way and not believe in themselves and want to, run when things look like it might be challenging. I had a great conversation with the client yesterday from my coaching group, and she's been offered a job. And then I want to hear your answer. She was offered a job by the owner of a very successful company, and he says, "Look, I want you to start in this role, and we think you'd be great at it." And he listed out all the reasons why she'd be great at it, right? So she calls me. She says, "He's offering me this job, but when I research what those jobs typically are, well, you need a bachelor's, you need this, you need all this experience, and they make all this money that I don't even make yet." And like her list of negatives were so long. I said, "Look, hold on a minute. This person knows you well enough to know that you're a perfect fit, and you're already talking yourself out of it." I mean, come on. Let's embrace the fact that you have shown him something, the characteristics of somebody that could be successful in that role. And you're trying to fight that. I said, let's flip the narrative, be confident in your own abilities, what he saw in you. And let's get on the offense here. Let's ask him how much he's actually willing to pay you for doing this great job. So anyways, that was my quick story, but please expand on that a little bit, because I want people to know they can do it.
Oh, so remember caveman brain? That was a whole, what we call caveman brain conversation. Now you talked about Mark Victor Hansen, and the line you took away was what? Tell me the line again.
What you believe is what you will achieve.
So what you believe is what you achieve. The challenge with that line is most people believe something and can achieve something, but they don't know how to change the belief or the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where caveman brain growth, business growth system comes in, because you have to be able to change it. So one of the things that we would have in that part of that conversation is something where the 4 places that caveman brain comes from: your parents, your childhood, your culture, your life experience. So someplace she learned in the subconscious to act this way. And we would pull that into the conscious, because that's when you start to figure things out and be able to change things, to say, like, how did you get here? What makes you devalue yourself, so to speak? Because something happened along the way where you decided to devalue yourself because that's how it was best for you. That's how you were able to survive.
Sure.
And once you figure that out, then you have to say to yourself, is that truth or not? Because nowadays, these values that in the belief systems you're carrying probably are not helping you. Is that serving you? And the answer is no, because you're just about to turn down a really good paying job because your caveman brain is making up all these stories that are not based in truth, right? They're not factual, they're opinions. And until you say, well, like, what's the facts that support that? The fact is that your caveman brain is projecting outward into the future. What could happen? The fact is the caveman brain wants to be safe. And so what it will do is it'll come up with all these different scenarios to ensure that you are safe so you don't die. The challenge is that none of that is really truth, right? And she's not even willing to listen to what he said. Again, 4 places from where that came from. What experience did she have in her childhood, her parents, her cultural life experience, that when someone tells something about her, she doesn't believe it.
Right.
Right. So when tackling all of that, which we call brain junk, and once you eliminate all of that, think about how much freer she will be to be able to move forth and be successful. But that's her caveman brain working to keep her safe in a place that doesn't need to keep her safe at all.
What I'm curious, since we're going down this road, I'll use another example of mine. That way people are clear. Why is it that some people don't go down that road? You know, even if they're being oppressed, and maybe it's not oppression per se, but as an example, I made really good money in high school, really good money. And, you know, I was living that life, right? What I believe I'm going to achieve. And I would shop at Nordstrom's because at the time that, you know, it was the Nordstrom story, like you could buy anything and if you don't like it, you can return it. They'll give you your money back. Like they had the best customer service. And a friend that worked there, and I knew that they had high quality. So I shopped at Nordstrom's and I bought my dad a gift from Nordstrom's. And he says, Jim, we don't shop at Nordstrom's. This family, that we can't afford Nordstrom's. That's a luxury. I said, you know what, Dad? I can't afford Nordstrom's and I will shop there, right? Here's a gift. I was not going to listen to what was happening in my household, right? I wasn't willing to go down that caveman brain road and go, yeah, I can't, right? Because it doesn't follow my background. What causes some people to go down that road and others like myself not to go down that road? Where's that disconnect or connect?
Well, usually it happens in life experiences. So think about your life experience and you said it very clearly. Nordstrom said you could return anything at any time and get your money back, right? So in many ways, that one sentence for you made it safe enough that if you bought anything from there, you could get your money back. Whereas your dad was like, we don't shop there because fancy people shop there or highfalutin people shop there. Like those are not our people. So the two very different ways of looking at it. You were looking at it from a value prop of, hey, I can get my money back if it's the wrong thing. He's looking at it from a culture point of view of those aren't my people. So why are we hanging out there? And therefore, you're looking at it in two different ways. Neither one of you is wrong, right? Both of you are right. And yet the viewpoint, and that's what's so great about Caveman Brain, is that the viewpoint of how we look at things can be totally different. Right? Think about just the story you told, the viewpoint of the woman who looks at it one way and the viewpoint of the person who wants to hire her looks at it a totally different way. And yet they're both right. So,
Yeah.
right. That's what's so great about Caveman Brain is, and it comes from, as again, your life experience is that I can return this back. Your dad's culture or from his parents or from his childhood is that those aren't our folks. We don't shop there.
Well, to be fair to the story, I shopped there because they sold surf apparel and I was a surfer. So they had all the fancy stuff. Then they were the first ones to carry surf apparel. So how do people start evolving out of, kind of this cycle of caveman brain? How do they start doing the work and start making it a little bit more natural of an exercise as opposed to a forced?
Yeah. So we don't ever force anything because force doesn't make you want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing you have to do is you have to want to get out of that. There are lots of times I'll say to clients and VIP individual coaching, I'm like, do you like living in the drama? Is that what you want? Or do you want something different? So that's the first question is do you want to do that? Because if you want to wear the hair shirt and feel icky all the time, then that's fine. That works for you. That's awesome. Then maximize it so that you can get what you're looking for. If it doesn't work for you anymore, and that's really where you need to start. If it doesn't work anymore, then you want to change. Then that's the first step is figuring out what to change. And then you have to think about what is it that you want to change? What's not working for you anymore? And we call that, then we talk about what do you want is the outcome. We call that Z to A thinking. So thinking about what's the outcome you want to achieve and then working backwards to see what the steps are to get that. And then once you think about the outcome, what would prevent you from getting there? Usually one of the 4 places that caveman brain comes from. And then once you have all of that and you start to think about, well, how would I get over those things? However that might be, you could read some books, you could self-taught, you could hire yourself a coach, you could join the Caveman Brain Business Growth System, however it might be, to get you to that outcome. And then once you get to the outcome, you celebrate success. And those are the steps. They sound really easy. And they are if you let them be. But most of the time, Caveman Brain makes them super hard, which is kind of dumb. But that's as long as you're like, look, there's nothing that's going to kill me. We can do this. It's going to be okay. What's the worst case scenario? My mom worked in healthcare. Worst case scenario, someone dies today. I tell my staff all the time, like, unless you kill someone, there's nothing that I can't come back from. You can make every mistake in the world. We can figure it out. Don't kill anybody. If they die, I can't help you. Although we did work with a funeral home and the funeral director was like, well, maybe we could resurrect. I'm like, no, actually, no. You kill him. I can't help you. But anything else, there's no mistake that I haven't made in my business that my employees would make that I can't fix.
I love that because, I read this article years ago and it was titled Surfers Make Better CEOs. Surfers make better CEOs. And the premise of it was, as a surfer, you make quick decisions to ride the wave or crash and burn. But regardless of which way you went, you have to deal with consequences. And unless you're going to die, pretty much anything can be dealt with. And there's another side to that, right? And if you made a mistake, don't make the mistake again. If you found success in it, hey, thank goodness you made that decision. You got the ride of your life. So I love that. All right. This isn't a thing for my show, so I'm not going to start doing this all the time, but I was just reading through some of your interview topics. I'm just wondering if I can give you one of the topics and maybe you can give us a couple sentences on each one, because they're all fascinating. And we could have spent an hour on each one of these. So let me rattle a few off. Maybe give us a couple, hints as to what that means. And then we'll wrap this thing up and hopefully we'll get a whole bunch of people to go to your website and learn more. So The first one is surviving the growing pains of your business. And I think a lot of people are going through this.
Yeah. So what happens is that, and I just had a potential client show up about this, owned a kitchen and bath company, has grown tremendously through the pandemic, but did not keep up with the growth. Often when we grow and we're making hay, we're just like, oh, the money's coming in and that's great. But when the money stops, we don't have enough money to throw at all of the problems that we had when we grew.
Sure.
So what I say to people is that when you're growing, deal with even if the train's going 1,000 miles an hour, deal with the problems then. Don't say you're too busy. Don't say you don't have enough time. Make time to work and fix the problems when you're super successful. Otherwise, you're going to be really unhappy when the success stops.
Yeah, I call that in making sure you invest in your business, because people are always so busy capturing all that money in the flow, they forget about investing in their business, and they get to this like, whoa, what happened? The wheels fell off, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. The number one thing that holds you back from being successful in business growth is
Caveman brain.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Well, think about the story you told. I mean, she's holding herself from being more successful. Fear of the unknown, fear of rejection. The biggest challenge we have is fear of success. People are so fearful that they're going to be super successful, which means they're going to be too busy, that people are going to judge them because they have all this bougie stuff. They're like, the fact is they're going to make these commitments that they can't keep up with. Yeah, fear of success. Caveman brain. There you go.
I'm going to give a little shout out to my wife real quick. We've been together over 12 years now, two beautiful young daughters, living the life, our best life ever. And her ex, probably her two exes prior to me, both told her she couldn't. She would never be, she couldn't, she doesn't, all those do's and don'ts. She got it all. And I was probably the first person to lift her up a little bit, and she has flourished. All you got to do is give a little water to that flower, and it's amazing to see what people can do. So if you're an employer, it doesn't matter who you are. Don't forget to water the flowers around you. Right?
Yeah.
Give them a little bit.
Yeah. Well, love language is really important. And if you know your love language and you know that words of affirmation or spending time or gifts or whatever it might be, make sure that you treat yourself really well, because self-care is probably the most important thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We don't do that often.
I'm so grateful they didn't treat her well, because I got her now and they have no idea what they missed out on. So thank you, gentlemen. You probably don't listen to this, but all right. The urgency trap. Why dealing with the urgent is killing your business.
Yes. We actually have a whole presentation on this that we've been giving to Vistage chapters, and I'm thinking about recording it and putting it up for free on the website. So maybe I'll do that now. Urgencies. What do we focus on? We focus on urgent and important. And just like sort of the business growth situation, if we continue to always focus on urgency in our organization, what do we develop? An urgency culture. What does that mean? Nobody is working on the things that are important, not urgent, which is where Steve Covey says we need to spend most of our time of our lives and our businesses. So if you're always focusing on firefighting in your organization, you're not going to have an organization that's going to be super successful. You're going to have a lot of burnout, a lot of turnover, not as much growth as you want. So don't be a fight or fire business, because the urgency is killing it.
I hope you put that on your website.
Yeah. It's
maybe a blog or something. I don't know. Do you have blogs on your website?
Yeah, we do. I'd think about that. Yeah.
Well, so this is a little sidebar. I hate it when I know something. I just feel like I got to share it, but this is a public forum, so I should share it right now. I read Mike Glover's book, Preparedness. And, it's not one of those, we're preparing for the day of the zombie apocalypse. It's talking about just being prepared as a family or as an individual. And what I loved about it is he basically discussed exactly what you did, is creating a culture of urgency could be a bad thing. And what he talks about is, let's just say you have that storage room in your house that you've got all the food and maybe you've got some first aid supplies and all these things. He says, as a parent, if you treat that like the doomsday room, then you're going to create a doomsday environment in your house. Like the kids will always be waiting for doomsday because we have this room, right? Instead of just saying, hey, we're prepared for whatever, maybe a power outage or, Hurricane Hillary to hit California or whatever that might be. And we've got some supplies down here, and you go in that room and you utilize those supplies and you rotate those supplies and you're educated about those supplies. So you're not creating an environment of doomsday, just like what you talked about, creating a business environment of this urgency trap. It's so important not to do that.
Well, think about businesses right now. All of businesses seem to run on urgency. What's the most important thing we have to do right now, as opposed to what do we need to do long term? And if you think even just about the stock market, it creates urgency. We have to meet the number. We have to meet the number. We have to meet the number. But what does that do for the company? Right? So urgency is killing your business.
Well, it's interesting. I had a client earlier this year, and the first thing we talked about is I wanted to build out basically a 5-year plan. Like, hey, what's the first year, years 1 through 3, and then what does 5 years look like from now? And we parted ways because he didn't believe in a 5-year plan. He believed in what I'm doing today and exactly at this moment, and I can get it all right now. I thought, okay, that's cool. We'll see you in 5 years, see where you're at. Just my opinion, but everything's grab. But look, as David Meltzer say, I've paid the dummy tax, so you don't have to. I'm in my mid-50s. I've paid a lot of dummy tax. All right. I got 3 more because they're on here, and I think they're the best 3. All right. Don't get addicted to more, get addicted to better.
Oh, so this is one of my favorites, to be perfectly
mine
honest.
too.
I get so many people who are like, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need more. But the reality is you don't really need more. You need better. And the fact is that our caveman brains thinks more, and we actually shut down because we can't handle the amount of what more looks like. So if we think about it as better, meaning I'm up leveling, I'm making more money in a different way, or making more money with higher level folks, that the brain will actually accept that and want to help you get better, but it will not want to help you get more. So you will sabotage yourself somewhere along the way when you think more and more and more and more and more.
I think a lot of people fell into this trend a couple of years ago, and it's still washing out there, is, I've got 7 revenue streams or 10 revenue streams. I need to go after it all. Why not just be really good at something and do well there? Right.
Right. 10 is too much. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of Alan Weiss, who was our coach, he used to say, do you want to move 3 things 100 inches, or do you want to move one thing 100 miles?
Yeah.
And right. So one thing 100 miles is way better, right, than 3 things 100 inches.
Well, I can't get enough of Andy Frisella's podcast, Real AF. It's been around for, 15 years. It was one of the top business podcasts. But people know Andy now as having several businesses. But he said, wait a minute, my first business, I made hundreds of millions of dollars before I started doing other ones. Like, I got really, really good at the first one. Now I'm dabbling in some others, but my first one is still my first love, Yep. So don't get addicted to more, get addicted to better. All right. 2 more. Give up goals and get results.
Okay. So this is the name of my book. As the results queen, I'd have a lot of people who came to me and they were like, Jean, I haven't figured out how to achieve my goals. And I'd say to them, okay, what results do you want to get? Because what happens is that goals often are things that are given to us that are too big, that is easy. Goals are easy for us to bail out of. And the caveman brain does not operate on goals. It operates on outcomes. So think about it. I don't have the goal to eat today. I have the need to eat today, right? It's not, so I don't have the goal to survive today. I have the need to survive today. And the fact is, when you think about outcomes, the caveman brain will go, yeah, I know outcome I get. I want to get an outcome. Like, I want to survive. I don't have the goal to survive. And I really do believe goals came from sports metaphor, getting the goal. But the fact is, it's not how our brains operate. So when my clients give up their goals and start to actually focus on the results they're looking for, or the outcomes they want to achieve, they achieve so much more. That's why I'm like, give up goals, because they don't work. Research shows that they don't work. And we're only doing it because it's a sports metaphor, and they're easy for us to get out of. Whereas an outcome, the brain will never allow you to not achieve an outcome, because it looks like that's a survival technique.
I love that perspective and how you've described it. I'm a goals person. I've always talked about having goals, but I understand exactly what you're saying. However, my focus is on values. I know if I'm looking at achieving my values, that my goals will fall in line. So it's similar to what you're saying, but a little bit different. So I appreciate that. Okay. Last one, just because it's on the list. I love the word Operation Freedom.
Oh, so many business owners get into business to become Operation Freedom, meaning that they want, and this is true for employees too, that they want freedom from life. They want freedom to do the things they want to do. But often when we're in a job, or in our businesses, we don't get freedom. So what we do at Caveman Brain Business Growth System is we make sure that you get the freedom that you want. So what's your operation freedom? What is it that you want to do? Like you just said, Jim, I'm living my best life. You probably have operation freedom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do too. But so many of us are not living our best lives. We're just not. So what is the operation freedom that you need to do or have in order to live your best life? And once you figure that out, then go get it and go achieve it, because most of us don't live operation freedom. And listen, it doesn't matter how much money you make or where you live in the world or what job you have. If you want operation freedom and you figure out what that is, you can work to it. It takes about 2 years, just so you know. It takes about 2 years.
Yep.
And once you get there, you're like, oh my God, this is great. And you got to just maintain it after that.
I would say it took me almost 2 years to the day.
Mhm.
And maybe let's just say you're living operation freedom now. One thing, maybe you've seen this, Dr. Gene, is I have to remind myself regularly that I'm living operation freedom, because my caveman brain says, no, you got to go do this, you got to do that. But then I look around, most of the time it's while I'm sitting on my patio watching my daughters play with their horses or their chickens or their rabbits, and, on our massive property that they get to run around on. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I asked for. But our caveman brain wants to say more, more, more.
Or what it does is our caveman brain feels like we're being judged by other people. So like, who are you to be out on a ranch doing all that stuff? What's wrong with you? It's a terrible place for you to be. You shouldn't be doing that. Right. So we're judged by other people, and then we take that in because of the 4 places caveman brain comes from. So the fact is, we have to not listen to what other people say, because it's not necessarily what we want. And at the end of the day, operation freedom has to be defined and then said, this is the life I'm leading. This is where I want to be.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, I've taken a little bit more of your time than I told you up front, but I was having fun. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I've enjoyed the conversation. So thank
good.
you so much.
Well, hopefully it resonates to the listener. So where can they find you? What's your website? What's your social media handles if you have them? Where can they find out more?
You can just go to cavemanbrain.com. And if you search up Gene the Results Queen, you'll get me in any social media handle whatsoever. And if you just want to drop me a line because you just want to have a conversation, just drop me a line at Gene at cavemanbrain.com. I answer all my emails. I'm happy to have any conversation. Every podcast, I actually say this, and no one has ever sent me an email. So there you go. So you be the first.
I love that. I love that when we throw these offers out there, listen, people, do it. You won't regret it.
Nope. Happy. And I'm not, I'm not there. I'm here. Our mission, and my mission since I started my company, is to leave you better than I found you. When I first started my company, I'd get a lot of, I had a consultant or I had a coach and they gave me nothing. I paid a lot of money. Here's this little book that I got. So I was just like, you know what, we'll offer a money back guarantee. And, if you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. And all the time I've been in business, no one has ever asked for a money back. Knock on one in that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I got to leave these people better than I found them. And that became my mission. I leave you better than I found you. And now that's my company's mission. We leave you better than we found you. That is all we want to do. And hopefully we've done that today on this podcast. So thank you for allowing us to do that.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll put your information in the show notes. I will put your email in the show notes. And let's see if anybody takes us up on that offer. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. And if you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend.